This is my bike. It cost $170, and with the equipment, about another $60. This is Rachel's bike. It cost $105, and another $50 with the gear. This is Shandong, and for the next week, our meager investments will give us access to places in the province not usually on the itinerary of foreign visitors. We set off from Rachel's suburban hometown of Qingzhou and head south toward the mountains without any particular destination. As we cross the river out of town, we see the last patches of industry, but soon see signs we've entered China's countryside. Perhaps the most explicit signs are those pronouncements reminding people to adhere to the one-child policy, and that there's no need to abort if that child is a girl. But looking around in these villages, there doesn't appear to be any shortage of children staring at the strange-looking foreigner. In fact, one gets the impression they're all alone in town. Their parents have all gone to the cities to work, and their grandparents farm the fields or tend to livestock. We stop to have a chat with these ladies in their late 70s and early 80s. They tell us they've lived in this village for generations. We asked them what life was like when they were younger, when Mao Zedong ruled the country. I asked what happened in the village during the Cultural Revolution. We ride deeper into the countryside and past terraced mountains dug out by peasants centuries ago, which are still used today, but they sit alongside signs of a more modern world. While we ride, something catches our eye, a building that towers over anything else in the area. This woman raises ducks and tells us she became Catholic in 1973, at the height of the Cultural Revolution. She had to worship secretly at that time until religious persecution eased in the 1980s. She says she now goes to church twice every day. The groundskeeper of the church comes out to talk to us. He tells us a French missionary brought Catholicism to the village over a century ago. The church was torn down during the Cultural Revolution and rebuilt in the 1990s. Now about half of the village's 150 people are members. He tells us China did very poorly under the old Soviet economic model, but now the country is following the lead of the 4 Asian tigers and using the American model, which has made everyone's life better. He says the Chinese government's religious policy is also very good now. But as we hit the road again, we see that not all religious beliefs receive the same treatment. The importance of supernatural beliefs in the countryside are apparent through these burial mounds we see again and again. They're strongly discouraged by the government, seen as a waste of space when farmland is so precious. But nobody seems too keen on listening. The dead lie quietly amidst the living. As we're riding, we're stopped and offered some snacks. We've stumbled on preparations for a wedding. The women will work all day preparing the feast. The men will watch. It seems we've come on an auspicious day. Down the road we come across another wedding. Again, the whole party comes out to have a look at us. For most of them, it's the first time to ever see a foreigner. We move on through the countryside and join the last bits of quiet life. These cars belong to people like us, a travel club that takes trips to escape from the city. Slowly we return to louder areas, towns that serve as trading hubs where businessmen truck in everything from rocks to livestock to even more trucks. But it seems foreigners aren't any more common here than in the villages. We find a hotel that used to be a food distribution center during the Mao era. It even boasts a conference center and some curious neighbors. but the owner is reluctant to let me stay. Every guest must scan their ID on this pad, which brings up all their personal information. Many say they aren't allowed to house foreigners. The owners of this hotel in another town tell me the police recently made them install this system for about $1,000 US. We pay $2.50 for the room that night. In yet another town, we hit a roadblock getting a hotel. I check in without registering, only to get a visit from the police that night. They kindly helped me register by taking down all my information and my picture. The next day we see that the battle against overpopulation extends well beyond the villages. As we start moving into the urban center of Linqiu, we get a look at China's other overpopulation epidemic, residential housing construction. One hardly needs to look at the economic data to realize something is odd here. Every direction you look, there's more housing complexes sprouting up. The city's entire skyline is dominated by them, leaving one to wonder, where would these buildings' inhabitants work? Will many of these buildings ever even have inhabitants? The construction of these apartments is advancing into this lot that's already been cleared and is being temporarily used for driver's ed classes. But one house still stands. The inhabitants have painted a message on the side. One woman who lives inside comes out to chat with us. She says it's only a matter of time before she'll have to go. As we wrap up our trip and return to Qingzhou, it's the same story. The town got a new party secretary a few years ago, who was anxious to show how much GDP growth he could spark. So he met his targets the best way he knew how, by demolishing old houses and selling the land to real estate developers. In a country where inflation is higher than interest rates, housing is seen by many as the best investment. Finally, our trip ends and we get back on the train to Beijing. On the way, it becomes clear that Linqiu and Qingzhou are hardly unique. In a country that's already estimated to have 64 million empty homes, more are still going up everywhere. One has to wonder how long it can last, and what will happen if the bubble bursts.